Oh, the self-titled release. I've been kind of dreading this day a little bit, but it's okay. City of Evil proved to be a real landmark success for Avenged Sevenfold, and with Waking the Fallen in that album's wake, there was a lot of momentum. This band, which started off kind of rugged, had transitioned themselves into one of the more successful bands in the world today. One that had a very, very fierce and dedicated fan base and put on electric live shows. What's interesting about this is that at this point in time, whenever the self-titled album was released, they were only 4 albums into their career. And they decided to take the audience, their audience, on kind of a pretty radical left turn. There's another band that sort of did that with their 5th album. Yeah, Metallica. They did that too. So 4th, 5th, whatever, it doesn't matter which numbered album that it is, this was a left turn album for sure. This was an album where Avenged Sevenfold certainly decided to experiment a little bit. This is one that definitely didn't have that same element of aggression and harmony as City of Evil. Instead, this was one that seemed to just pull the ideas from everybody and see how diverse they could make this disc. And it's certainly one that boasts an element of diversity, that's for damn sure. This disc has a lot of hard rock signatures to it. It has a ton of heavy metal signatures that are very much geared toward the radio side of heavy metal, a very accessible heavy metal. There's some very cinematic atmospheres with tracks such as like A Little Piece of Heaven, which the accompanying music video is even more like a Tim Burton disaster piece. And then whenever you listen to a track like Dear God, which is the very final cut on the album, you start to recognize that they could even maybe pull off a little bit of like strangely nasally country music. I don't know. But I do like the diversity. I like the idea. I like what Avenged Sevenfold did on this album, or at least what their intentions were. Their intentions were to pull everybody and really get as many different ideas as they could and just try them out. And at this stage of their career, that's a pretty big risk. That's a ballsy move, I'm not going to lie. And if you say that that's bullshit, you're bullshit, because that is a ballsy move. Imagine it. You've just released 2 great albums, 2 albums that have not only doubled or tripled your fan base, but it's expanded your fan base probably by 100 times. And then you decide to throw that fan base probably one of the least accessible albums in their catalog. It's a lot to ask. However, this album succeeds in its simplicity at times. Whenever you think about songs such as Almost Easy or Scream, they are a little bit simpler than the stuff that you heard on City of Evil. This is something where the overall complexity toned down just a little bit, and it actually achieved quite a bit of success. You did hear The Beast and the Harlot, for example, on the radio a pretty good bit, but whenever it came to songs such as Almost Easy or Critical Acclaim, those songs were almost unavoidable whenever this album came out. It's not to the point where, well, songs that we're going to be talking about later, those are even more unavoidable, but this is kind of what furthered the addiction process for a lot of individuals with Avenged Sevenfold that maybe got hooked because of listening to The Beast and the Harlot on the radio. Either way, this is an album that is filled with tracks that you will not be stranger to whenever you come to a Avenged Sevenfold set. The aforementioned Almost Easy and Critical Acclaim will certainly be present there. You will also probably hear Scream. If you hear A Little Piece of Heaven, good lord, have you got yourself a treat on your hands. This cinematic song just has a great storyline to it, and that's one aspect of this group that I think at times goes is critically underrated and kind of gets brushed aside and looked past, mainly because it seems like tracks of this variety from the band come along once in a blue moon, when in reality, lyrically speaking, it happens a little bit more often than you think. Whenever you consider the complexity of City of Evil, then you understand. But overall, this is an album that seems like a bit of a step back, and whenever you listen to it these days, it doesn't hold up. However, you also whenever you listen to this album, kind of marvel a little bit at the ballsiness of Avenged Sevenfold for attempting an album such as this one. This was one that was right at the height that certainly could have dismissed a lot of fans or really swayed them away. It was almost like weeding out the weak, weeding out the ones that were just into the band because maybe they had friends that were into the band, either that or the posers, so to speak. I've been told that the Killers did that with their albums after Hot Fuss, and you can kind of understand that because Hot Fuss was definitely written in a different style. But with Avenged Sevenfold, this is just a multiplicity of styles, really. This is one that certainly encompasses a lot of different things and does its best in order to hold its own. And it does with a certain element of precision, but at the same time, it's being saved far too often from redundancy. Whenever you get to tracks such as A Little Piece of Heaven or Brompton Cocktail, it's a nice little deviation, either that or it just has a little bit more of a memory to it, at least on my side. But then you understand that the second half of this disc has the diversity that it does, and you're a little bit impressed. It actually gives you a little bit of impression. This is an album that's easy to sort of flip-flop back and forth from praising and kind of chastising it with. This is definitely not one that's an easily accessible disc, and it's definitely not one that's really all of that simple to dissect. This, however, did mark a change in Avenged style in the fact that the album got a little bit shorter. The past two, Waking the Fallen and City of Evil, both were starting to really push the boundaries of length, and one of my keynote downfalls for a couple of those albums were just the sheer lengthiness of them. They seemed to overextend themselves almost, with ease. And it seemed like a lot of that was being a bit forced. With this album, it's a lot shorter, and the experience flows a little bit quicker as a result, but at the same time, the flow is also a little bit disheveled. It's one that makes some chronological sense, but has some bumps in the road that feel a little bit alienable. Overall, not a bad disc, but we need to talk about tragedy. We need to talk about a true nightmare for a lot of Avenged Sevenfold fans. We need to talk about the subsequent album that came from that nightmare. The loss of the Rev, the introduction of Mike Portnoy, and a brand new Avenged Sevenfold, a band that really had to do as Metallica did before them to really bring this review full circle. Metallica had to move full circle after the death of Cliff Burton. The Rev lost his life, and now Avenged Sevenfold was going to have to come full circle. Wonder what happened with Nightmare. Let's find out.